Well, she might be halfway across the world in New York, but back home, Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern is facing accusations of misleading Parliament. And government ministers are still working on releasing communications with tech entrepreneur Derek Handley, but he beat them to the punch. Along with a statement expressing his disappointment about the botched appointment process for the position of Chief Technology Officer, Mr Handley has released texts and emails between himself and former Minister Clare Curran, as well as his communications with Jacinda Ardern. Ms Curran lost the portfolio in August after failing to record a meeting with Mr Handley and has since resigned as a minister altogether. Our political editor Jane Patterson has more.
Mr Handley was paid out $100,000 after being offered the role when the government decided to rescope the position. That had followed weeks of controversy centred around how Clare Curran handled communications with him as they discussed several aspects of the CTO role. Now the focus is on the Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern. She told Parliament last week she'd had a text from Mr Handley about the CTO role but did not reply because it would have been inappropriate. The communications released today show she did respond to a text asking for an email address so he could send her his thoughts about the CTO role. Her response is redacted. Nationals leader Simon Bridges is calling on her to correct the record.
The Prime Minister said there was one text. She said that she didn't even dignify it with a response. She made clear a bunch of other things, and the picture presented by the texts is anything but that. Actually, there's been a conversation there.
Speaking from New York, Ms Ardern said she had not misled the House.
My recollection about that was simply that he said he was excited about the future, and I did not engage with him. I have not engaged since he mentioned his interest in the CTO role. It would not have been appropriate for me to do so.
Prime Minister, what did you mean when you said, I'll talk to the team and about how we can make use of you?
He said that he wanted to come back to New Zealand and get involved. At that point, I had no idea he was at all interested in the CTO role.
She says she's hidden nothing.
I confirmed that we have been in contact, that he had all my contact details, that I've known him for a number of years. And what I've been very clear on from the beginning is that I have not engaged with him directly. When he sent me an email, I did not reply. When he mentioned it in a text, I didn't engage. Mr Handley himself has confirmed that.
Why didn't you reply?
It wouldn't have been appropriate to engage with him on the CTO role directly.
Last week in Parliament, the Senior Minister Grant Robertson detailed email exchanges between Clare Curran and Derek Handley that Ms Curran had handed over. Today he returned to the House to make this correction after Mr Handley's own release.
I inadvertently left out 3 emails from the first exchange between Clare Curran and Derek Handley that began on the 11th of August. I was unaware at the time of giving that the answer that there were 2 further emails on 11 August from Clare Curran in response to Mr Handley's original email, and an email from Mr Handley on the 13th of August to begin the process for setting up a phone call. I apologise to the House for that.
The former minister, Ms Curran, is still working to make all of her own communications with Mr Handley public.
Mr Handley's releasing his communications with myself and the Prime Minister is his right and his choice. With relation to the government's process, it is a different process, and there are other responsibilities and obligations, and one of the obligations that I had was to respect the integrity of the process with regards to him.
She does not believe the scrutiny of the Prime Minister's communications is cause for any embarrassment.
No, I think this is part of what happens when there is a controversial issue that is, and transparency is actually occurring.
Meanwhile, the Minister Megan Woods, who inherited the portfolio from Clare Curran, rang Mr Handley today and apologised to him for the fact he went through the process but did not end up with the position. From Parliament for Checkpoint, Jane Patterson.